Hey everyone, and welcome to this channel. This is number 3. This is the third part of my Pink Floyd countdown, my Pink Floyd ranking, my Pink Floyd list of the albums that I guess mean the most to me or are what I consider my favorites at this particular time. I think it's really important to emphasize how much Pink Floyd are one of those bands that just sticks with you. It sticks with me. I think it sticks with a lot of people. In my mind, the best music that's created is music that you can come back to year after year, or maybe take a break from for 5 years, 10 years even, come back to it and still find something in it that you love, and maybe something different in it that you didn't hear before, but because you're older, because you've got new experiences, because you've heard more music, or you've read more literature, or you've just lived on this planet for longer and you can relate to things. I think probably the most surprising thing to realize about some of these records is just how young the band was when they were writing them. Really mature subjects lyrically. I think that however many faults he may have and however many enemies he may have these days, Roger Waters is absolutely brilliant as a lyricist. These records, these top 5 records that I'm counting down now, and what you see behind me is just a placeholder to cover them up. This album, you have to watch the other 2 videos to see where it falls. Each one of these next 5 records I'm going to talk about in my ranking, the top 5, at one point or another were number 1 for me. They're my favorite Pink Floyd record for a while. And it's been really hard, honestly, to rank these top 5, especially the top 2, and then upon listening further, the top 3 became kind of difficult. But I've really tried to be faithful to what I've listened to the most recently and what I've really come to appreciate and how I see this list for me right now. But rest assured, all 5 of these for me are absolute classics. I would recommend any of them to someone who's looking to get started with Pink Floyd. And let's get started. So the first one for me, number 5, is their 1977 record, Animals. Now, at one point, I had this as number 1. Maybe even a few years ago, I would have put this up as number 1. When was this record most important to me? I'd heard it. I think I probably had heard it by the time I was 16 or 17. But it became really important to me in my mid to late 20s. I listened to it obsessively for a while. I think I was kind of depressed, going through some changes, career changes, relationships, that kind of thing. And I just found myself sort of obsessed with this record. Now, I've mentioned this in other videos. I did come to Pink Floyd through The Wall. I came to Pink Floyd with Roger Waters' voice way more prominent than David Gilmour's. I'll get to a little bit later my experience with some of these other records, but for me, Animals was always kind of in that zone where I loved it because it sounded like the Pink Floyd I loved best. I love sort of the punk sort of edge that this one has. It really has this like driving force through it. There's only 4 songs, I guess. The acoustic intro and outro of Pigs on the Wing, and then we get Dogs, which I think is absolutely brilliant. David Gilmour's guitar work in there is essential. Sheep and Pigs, and basically what he did is Roger Waters, he modeled this off of the book Animal Farm by George Orwell, and separated people into 3 groups: pigs, dogs, and sheep. In my understanding, the pigs were like the ruling class, the rulers. Dogs being the businessmen and sort of the enforcers of the pig's rule. And also then we have the third one, which is sheep. I think it's mostly the people, probably most people, but the people that get caught up in this crap and just go along with it. And like a lot of these later day Pink Floyd records, you can really look at this and tie it to where we are now, unfortunately. The name Mary Whitehouse keeps coming up. She was in the UK. She was very conservative, wanting to go back to kind of morality police type thing. And I think by the fact that they keep saying White House over and over, I know that it was not meant to be the U.S. White House, but let's just say if you think about the White House, I don't think you're horribly wrong on your interpretation of what Animals will be for you. It's a record I've come back to over and over again. I always loved Pigs on the Wing, love Dogs. love Sheep, love all of it, really. It's a pretty compact album. It's a little bit more raw sounding. They built their own studio and they hadn't really completed it. They weren't using EMI or Abbey Road. So it's not quite the fidelity. I don't know, drop the needle and impress all your friends with just how absolutely amazing it sounds. But it does sound really good. It's not a bad sounding record by any means. Now they tried to remix, or they did remix it back in the 2008 or something like that, and they finally put it out in 2018. And it does make the record sound a little bit more like a conventional Pink Floyd record. There's a lot of issues with the vinyl. I have it. I must say I've spinned it like once or twice when it first came out. I go back to this usual, Pink Floyd. I like the rough edges on this one. I like the sound of this one. I didn't really feel like you needed to change it, but it is nice having, I guess, a little experiment that you can listen to as well with the remix album. So, okay, that is my number 5. Like I said, if I'd done this in my mid to late 20s, this would definitely be number 1, and it has been kind of in and out of that spot for most of my life. So, all these have in some ways, but Animals definitely. Number 4 for me is where it all started. Pink Floyd, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. This is their very first record. This is with Syd Barrett. There's various frontmen or leaders of the band, I should say. For a long time, from the beginning it was Syd Barrett, and then for a long time it was this power struggle sort of between David Gilmour and Roger Waters, with David Gilmour singing most of the songs. Then it starts to shift to more Roger Waters kind of taking over with Animals and definitely The Wall and for sure The Final Cut. And then we go to a Gilmour fronted version for the last incarnation of the band from like 1987 to I guess whenever The Endless River came out. This album is essential, I think. It's a different Pink Floyd. I mean, if you like early Pink Floyd, Saucer Full of Secrets, Atom Heart Mother, this, maybe not Atom Heart Mother, Saucer Full of Secrets, maybe Ummagumma, the live record, then yeah, you can kind of tie this record into it because they're still kind of in that sort of psychedelic sound. But this is Syd Barrett's party, and we're all joining him, and what a interesting record. I mean, this, talking about different time periods of my life, 1920, this would be probably my favorite Pink Floyd record at that time. I absolutely love this record and got really into it in college, to the point where I think like a lot of people, kind of romanticizing Syd Barrett, this guy that just burned so brightly and then went away, and kind of became obsessed with wondering like what happened to Syd. Would he ever do a return? Even in record stores, looking under his name and thinking, what if there was a new record there? Which, looking back, I mean, there's no way, but also he wasn't that old at the time. I mean, he's probably 40 around that time that I was into this and super, super into him, Syd Barrett, his solo records, as well as this record. I just love the psychedelia of it. I love his guitar playing. I love the early stereo, which is panning all over the place in some songs. His guitar sounds like super raw sometimes. I love the whimsical nature of the songs. I've got a bike, you can ride it if you'd like. It's got a basket of bellet rings and things to make it look good, or The Gnome. I want to tell you a story about a little man, if I can. And all these songs are just so wonderful lyrically. Matilda Mother, and then you have these great great musicians working on a song like Astronomy Domain or Interstellar Overdrive. But for me, yeah, it is Syd Barrett. It is that legend. I've often thought, I've told people, if I could write a film and get it financed, I would do the Syd Barrett story. I would go to this time period and I would just completely blow it out like those other biopics that you've got. The Dylan one, I guess, would be the crowning achievement of those in my mind. Like if you could do something like that with Syd Barrett, because Syd Barrett inspired so many records. I mean, without Syd Barrett, I don't know what Roger Waters would have written about half the time. I mean, he was the inspiration for, I think, all of the following records I'm going to talk about. And then some before then, certainly some songs. I mean, how can it not be a major part of your life when your really good friend and bandmate literally just starts losing his mind and you're on tour and he can't lip sync to the songs on television appearances. He refuses to sing half the time. And the story goes one day they just didn't pick him up. They got David Gilmour to come in for a little while. It's gonna be a 5-piece band, and kind of like the Beach Boys, Syd Barrett was going to stay at home and write songs. Well, that didn't really happen. So this is the only album that's full of Syd Barrett originals, and where Syd is very much the front man. You'd have him play in a couple songs on Sauce Full of Secrets and sing the last song, Juggling Blues. But this is it, and what a record it is, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. And this came out in 1967, the same year as the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. It's just one of those great psychedelic records, way at the top on any list I would make of psychedelic records, and number 4 on the list I'm making right now of my best favorite, whatever you want to call it, Pink Floyd records. Number 3. This just was hard. I almost wanted to have a 3-way tie. I really did, especially after listening to the next record again with in the middle of a room with 2 speakers forming a triangle. I'm in the middle. I've got the lyric sheets out now. I've also got my computer, and I'm pulling up little information on the songs too. Deep dive into this record, and it completely blew me away. And for some people, they like to dismiss it, but not me. No way. And it is Pink Floyd, The Wall. It's the one that got me into the band. I told this story a little bit in the first video I did. I was in, I think, 8th grade, and I saw We Don't Need No Education. Somebody had written it on the chalkboard. Now, I'd heard that song before, but the discussion that opened up around what that song meant and all that was really intriguing to me, that you should discuss music and what it means and all that. And then flash forward maybe 2 years, I think 10th grade, 9th grade or 10th grade, I got introduced to The Wall, the album, and I love this record. I absolutely love this record. And if you think about the graphics on this record, Pink Floyd, The Wall, I was going to pull it out. I've got the little insert in here that does it. But the writing, the messy kind of writing, Pink Floyd, The Wall, and you think about how they didn't really have they weren't making videos with them in it, put it that way. I thought, like a lot of kids, I'm sure, that are of a certain age, bands don't have the history. You don't know it. I thought this was a punk or new wave band. And if you listen to Roger Waters' voice, yeah, it sounds like that. David Gilmour, it took me a while to get used to even the songs on here to some extent with David Gilmour on it, because I like that Roger Waters kind of just more theatrical voice. And boy, does this have this in spades. I like the concept here. In fact, the concept became even more clear to me as I sat down with it and just really listened to it the other day. I love Nick Mason's drums on this. I mean, it's such a punchy record. Just the energy of it just comes out at you, and it's a lot of dynamics, right? Quiet and kind of, and then loud, and a lot of times those drums would just sound like they're coming right out of the stereo. Right out of the speakers and leap out at you or something. It was interesting, some lyrics that I had wrong all these years. Mother didn't need to be so high. I always thought it said that. Mother didn't have to be so high. Like, she's not only this domineering mother who's creating walls around his son, but also that she was somehow, taking care of herself during the day with some pharmaceuticals. It's such a simple thing, but when you read the lyrics, and I had it on cassette. It was just one of those cassettes with a blank insert thing, right? They just had the titles on the outside and the wall, and that's it. So sitting down and reading the lyrics and realizing that line is, mother, did it have to be so high? Did the wall have to be so high? Wow, okay. It's a little thing, and maybe some people know it forever, but for me, it just kind of opened up the record a little bit more. I love the whole sound of this. I think it's got just absolute killer songs on it. This record is 80 minutes long, so it is like 2 Dark Side of the Moons. I mean, it is a very long record. I can see why people would have trouble maybe getting into this album the same way if you're 25 or older, or if you got into Pink Floyd when around the time of Dark Side of the Moon, or even Wish You Were Here, because this sounds like a completely different band to me. I mean, there's a few songs like Comfortably Numb and maybe Young Lust that kind of you could maybe possibly fit on those earlier records, but for the most part, it sounds to me like a complete reinvention. And like I said, I fell for this this part of Pink Floyd, it made it very difficult for me to, in some ways, get into the rest of it. Besides Animals and the Final Cut, because they're so similar to this. First side of this record is absolutely flawless. In the Flesh, The Thin Ice, Another Brick in the Wall Part 1, Happiest Days of Our Lives, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, Mother. Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, of course, has been played to death, and Happiest Days of Our Lives, sometimes by extension. Not in the context of the record. You put this thing on, oh my god, it just sounds absolutely amazing. Love it. And then you get to the second side, and I mean, the whole second side too, I was like, okay, if I had to cut a song in here, I don't know that I would. I mean, Goodbye Blue Sky, Young Lust, Another Brick in the Wall Part 3, Empty Spaces, Don't Leave Me Now. I mean, they're all so essential, and even ending with Goodbye Cruel World. In some ways, that could have been the record, but it's only telling half the story. Sometimes I was wondering recently, like what it would have been like if they put out two records, like The Wall Part 1 or Prelude to the Wall, and then Another Brick in the Wall, or I don't know, two different albums of this as separate releases where you could put on one and feel like you listen to the record and then put on another and it's another record. I wonder if that would have helped, because I think now it's really hard to just commit to listening to The Wall, but I'm telling you, if you haven't in a while, do it. It is an amazing record, and it has every right to be way up on the list, and younger me would put this on at number one for a long time. Like 6 little inserts here, and it's interesting with these inserts. They're the songs aren't in the order we know. A lot of them, because they change around the order at the last second. Is there anybody out there? Nobody Home. I mean, Nobody Home is just one of the saddest songs, but so perfect. It's so minimal, and it just feels like everything's right there. And I was reading that was a instance where Bob Ezrin, who produced the record, and David Gilmour, I think, were telling Roger Waters they needed one more song to kind of pull the whole story together. I guess when he gave them this long demo tape of The Wall, they started to map out what it would be like, the story, like a screenplay. And I think there might have been a hole in it at this section. So he wrote the song, came back, got real pissed off, I guess, and went home. And 2 days later comes back with this song. It's like pretty incredible song, Nobody Home. Vera, Bring the Boys Back Home. I mean, sometimes that used to really annoy me, but it's, anti-war. What else are you going to say about that? Bring the Boys Back Home. I mean, it's got a great line. Don't leave the children on their own. Bring the boys back home. I mean, you think about people as you get older anyway, you think about people fighting these wars. They're kids. They're like 18, 19 years old, most of them. So, and war is a common theme. Of course, it comes back over and over for Roger Waters. Comfortably Numb is absolutely brilliant. We all know that song. Just gorgeous. Beautiful. I guess it's one of the last times that Roger Waters and David Gilmour really worked together, like to create a song. Just absolutely perfect song. Never get tired of that. I mean, a lot of times if I hear Pink Floyd on the radio, I'll turn the station, because Pink Floyd, with the exception of maybe that middle period I was talking about, or maybe the early period too, where you could make a compilation, I generally don't like hearing these songs out of order. I like hearing them in the context of the record. Hey You. Oh my god, another just absolutely brilliant song. Now, side 4, if you're going to trim any of this would be the time, but yet The Show Goes On is pretty essential to the concept. Then you get to this really disturbing part of the record, which I don't think would be as disturbing for me, or wasn't when I was younger. It wasn't disturbing to me, that disturbing, until yesterday, when I sat down with this between 2 speakers and really listened to it again. The Rise of Fascism. I mean, I know he's thinking that he's this dictator, but the lyrics in here, holy crap, it is really disturbing considering what's going on in the United States right now, and scary as hell. I read a comment about the movie. Now, I haven't seen the movie The Wall since I was probably 17. And I was reading reviews of it just to see, because it was just totally dissed at the time. And I'm like, was it really that bad? I remember loving it. And you go on IMDb, and the rating's really good. It's like 8.0. And a lot of the comments, one of them was like, do people still get this? Would people get this in the United States? And I was like, why wouldn't they get it? Because it's talking about fascism, right? And I was like, why wouldn't they get it? And then I saw when the comment was left, it was left in 2002. So then we get into, Stop and the trial. The trial is so over the top. I mean, some of these songs, I do like The Trial. I kind of wish that maybe they just saved for the movie, but it's brilliant at the same time. It's absolutely brilliant. Him being Pink, the character, being on trial for all these. Pink, now that name does come out of the movie, but I think the concept was still very baked into the record. But on trial by his school teacher and his mom and his mother rather, and a girlfriend, and then you've got this judge, this giant ass basically, as you see in the movie, and you see on the illustration and the gatefold of this as well. Just totally comes down on him hard, and basically has to remove these barriers around him, and probably just be like everyone else. I think, I don't know, because he seems like he really fills with the urge to defecate over the fact that this guy Pink has feelings. So maybe he just needs to be numbed by society. I don't know, but brilliant record. Outside the Wall, I love how it just kind of trails off. It says something like, and this is, and then you listen to In the Flesh part 1, first one, Where We Begin. I mean, there's that little like looping thing that they created with this where it just feels kind of unending, which I think kind of works in the record's favor too. I could go on and on about The Wall. I'm probably spending too much time with it, but so many people diss this record. It's great. And, it doesn't sound like Dark Side of the Moon or Wish You Were Here, but wow. I mean, he's really, really powerful lyricist. I might do a standalone video on this sometime so I can quote lyrics more and all that. But number 3 for me from 1979 is The Wall. Okay. These next two were real hard too. And this was before I listened to The Wall again. It was neck and neck between these two. What was going to be number 1? But I made my decision for today anyway. Number 2 is Wish You Were Here from 1975. This is my most played Pink Floyd record of the last 10 years, for sure. This is my go-to Pink Floyd record now. I play this a lot. If I'm going to listen to a Pink Floyd record, prior to listening to all 15 of them to do this video, this is what I reach for, like 90% of the time. I love a lot of things about it I didn't like initially. I probably heard it in high school. I know I did at some point. And I like the song Wish You Were Here. I kind of like Shine On You Crazy Diamond. I didn't really get into it. And partly because of the long, slowly building Shine On You Crazy Diamonds, part 1 through 5 and 6 through 9 or something at the end of it. Now I absolutely love that. I love listening to this record. I love the way that simple guitar part just repeats and builds. And of course the story about Syd Barrett in those lyrics. But it just pulls me in. It's a very calm record. I can put it on in the mornings, Sunday morning, and it's not going to like disrupt the mood or anything. It plays all the way through just perfectly. Even a song like Have a Cigar, which has Roy Harper singing on it, normally that would irritate the shit out of me if somebody else was singing a song, a Pink Floyd song. But for whatever reason, it sounds enough like Roger Waters or David Gilmour, somewhere in the middle, if that is possible, that it's never really bothered me, and it works. I tend to forget that Roy Harper, who I know very little about, is singing that song. Other highlights, Welcome to the Machine. I know that a lot of this was like his angst, Roger Waters, at the record company. But it plays so well, for anybody, really, just thinking about our lives and how we get caught up in things and the machinery of work and life and all of that, different forces at play. Of course, the song Wish You Were Here is absolutely incredible. And I think that's it, right? There's only 5 songs on here. But it is a absolutely brilliant record. And it sounds phenomenal. I feel like, and I've read, this is sort of the last record that the band really worked on as a cohesive unit, the 4 of them. Nick Mason, Richard Wright, Roger Waters, and David Gilmour. And they just do an exceptional job on it. I absolutely love Wish You Were Here. Like I said, it was a slow burner for me. It took me a while. Both of these records are. This took me a while to really appreciate. And once I did, I've come to really enjoy it. So that might be the biggest theme on here, is when I was younger, like those Roger Waters Dame records were always way at the top. I just love that stuff. And as I've gotten older, I've tended to appreciate the musicianship, the instrumentals, the other band members, and just the way that they work together so well. David Gilmour without Roger Waters solo, or especially in Pink Floyd, it wasn't right. Roger Waters, Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, Radio Chaos, Amused to Death, they're missing the band. They're missing that counterpart. They're missing like David Gilmour, Richard Wright, and Nick Mason. This band needed its people. It needed its core members, even when they shifted around, early on. But these four, from I don't know, metal on or whatever, they needed to really gel together to make absolute masterpieces. This is right before Roger Waters really became the dominant force in he'd been writing all the lyrics for a while, at least the album before this for sure, Dark Side of the Moon. But this is brilliant follow-up to almost an album you would think would be just impossible to follow up, Dark Side of the Moon, but they do this so perfectly, and they do it by creating something different. This is quite different experience listening to this than Dark Side of the Moon. Brilliant album from 1975, Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here. Okay, I don't think it's any mystery what's number one, and like I said, these two are dueling it out because this is the record I play the most. Full stop. But I had to give number one to 1973's Dark Side of the Moon. My story with Dark Side of the Moon, if you probably haven't figured it out, I struggled with this record because I got so into the Waters-led Pink Floyd, Of the Wall, Animals, and Final Cut that the other stuff just didn't quite sound right to me. It didn't sound like the same band. A friend of mine who was instrumental in introducing me to Pink Floyd, I think Beyond the Wall, gave me a copy of this, his copy, or I think I dubbed his cassette or something before I got my own. And he's like, yeah, this one's hard to get into. Good luck. It's really just got one regular song on it. And that was the case. That was the case for me. I still am a little baffled how this album became so successful, because the only song that really stands out the first several times you listen to this, at least for me, is Money. The rest of it, now, looking back to when I was like 15, I hadn't been exposed to as much music, and especially experimental music. So this record just sounded like a bunch of sound effects and sleepy vocals because I was used to the more theatrical stuff. And then Money, I just thought was okay. And of course, later on, I'd hear Brain Damage and get to the end of it, and I'm like, oh, that's Roger. Okay, that's a voice I like. But it just took me forever to get into Dark Side, to the point where I was just kind of like, I don't know, what's the big deal about Dark Side of the Moon? This has been the sleeper hit for me. Now, it's a hit for everyone else. I mean, everyone, Dark Side of the Moon, Dark Side of the Moon, Dark Side of the Moon. It's Dark Side of the Moon, right? It's one of the biggest selling records of all time. It stayed in the top 40 albums chart like forever, Hot 100 or whatever, one of those charts forever. It just didn't do it for me for the longest time, but I came to really respect it. And much like all Pink Floyd music, if I sat down and really listened to it, and a disservice again with cassettes, with just the crappiest packaging of just the song titles and a little square of the cover, and that's it. Nothing on the inside, no lyrics, nothing. So you weren't as invited as much to sit down with it and listen to it the way that I would certainly listen to this record now. It has really become like, I get it. And, I always loved the lyrics to Time. I always loved the lyrics to Us and Them, Brain Damage. I love anything Sid related, of course. And like Wish You Were Here was dedicated to Sid Barrett, or Shining Your Crazy Diamonds was written about him. Wish You Were Here probably was too. This album is sort of, Brain Damage and Eclipse could definitely be written about him. If he's there intentionally or not, he's in the back of, I think, Waters' mind. But this album is such a powerful piece on aging, time, why we're here, war, what it means to be human, conflict, material things. It's incredible to me that a musician who is probably, I don't know, how old would he have been? Like 26 maybe when he wrote this? That had so much wisdom that you would think that you wouldn't get till much later. It's easy to write off like younger people and go, oh, whatever. They need to kind of, grow up a little bit before they really understand the world. We never think about that with our with our rock stars, right? That wrote these brilliant records. But this, I mean, this is like head and lyrically, this is just head and shoulders above so much more, so much of that other music out there. It's their crowning masterpiece. The guitar work on it's brilliant. I mean, great Gig in the Sky. The vocalist on that is just absolutely incredible. I mean, death is a big part of this record. You know, it just is. I find it just so rewarding, and like the best Pink Floyd records, like Animals, like The Wall, like Wish You Were Here, especially. It is a record you sit down between two speakers, you put on some headphones like I did earlier, and you listen to this record, and it'll teach you something. I used to have an argument with my dad where he said that all music is entertainment. And I'm like, no. I was like, it's so much more than that. I mean, this is like when I was in high school or whatever, and he's probably changed his tune on it too. No, it teaches you stuff. I mean, teaches you. It's like it can be like as powerful, if not more powerful, than the best book you've ever read. So, if you're gonna kind of bottle Pink Floyd and give it to someone as like truly representative of them, their sound, but also like the human condition, I mean, this would be the one. This is the one that you would want preserved for eternity, so that people would hear, you know, decades and decades and 100 years from now. It's that good of an album, and yeah, it's number one for a reason. But Dark Side of the Moon, I mean, if you haven't heard in a while, put it on. It's not overrated. It really isn't. There's a reason why it gets the attention it gets, and one of the joys of getting back into vinyl is like sitting down, you know, dropping the needle on this thing, and you know, being moved to another place. I tend to view this record as an experience. I don't listen to it very often. Some of my favorite records I don't listen to that often, but when I do, it's an experience. It's an adventure. I want to be moved by it. I am ready for it. And this album, if you're in that space, will absolutely move you. These top five are the top five for a reason, like I said before. And if I haven't mentioned it, you know, there's a line there, a pretty thick line between like number 6 and the others, and these top five. Like these top five are unmovable in my opinion, for me, and they've stayed in the top five in one position or another for a long time, my whole life. So thanks everyone, really appreciate it. And yeah, leave a comment, tell me what your favorites are, tell me what your top 5 would be. And I've got one more video coming in the series, and that's just going to be my thoughts on seeing Pink Floyd live at Pompeii. I have not seen that since I saw it on video cassette once when I was 17, and I loved it. So it'd be really interesting knowing so much more about this band, having rediscovered, in some cases discovered, you know, that period from like 68 to 72, especially thinking of an album like More, and having a new appreciation for this band. And yeah, so it should be really interesting seeing the movie too. But thanks everyone, really appreciate you watching these.